Hi, and welcome to this week's Wu Wei Wisdom, a life lessons teaching. It's great to be back with you all. Now, are you stuck in a toxic or abusive relationship that you just can't walk away from? There can be many practical reasons, such as money issues or children, that stop people leaving bad relationships. But very often, what stops people are complex and powerful emotional issues that keep people a prisoner within these relationships. Well, if you think this applies to you, in this teaching, we're going to be digging deep to uncover and unravel what is going on here so you can finally break free of the emotional ties and manipulations that are keeping you trapped. Okay, David, I know you work every week with clients, individual clients and couples, on their relationship issues. Why is it that your clients find it so difficult to leave a toxic or abusive relationship?
Well, I think it's very important before we dig into the emotional side and
Yeah.
to emphasize that we're dealing with the emotional side here. So if you're in a physical abusive relationship or somehow trapped in a kind of a physical way, please go and seek help. The authorities are getting very good on helping you and compassionate on helping you. Don't get confused with what we're talking about because we want to focus, and I focus when I work with my clients on the relationship of the emotions, understanding your emotions, understanding the emotions of the relationship, and being able to address and to deal with the emotions of your partner. So this video will be mainly about emotions.
And so you mentioned physical abuse, but also money issues and practical issues such as children do keep people tied into bad relationships.
They do, Alex, and this is why I'm trying to make the distinction between emotional and the physical stuff, because sometimes, such as money, can be caused from an emotional basis because you've given all your power, and you see that's the emotion, away to your partner. So they hold the power over to you, and the emotional dynamic of the relationship has changed. If we're talking about physically being hit, please go to the authorities. This video is not for you. This is something you need to go and get some legal advice, some correct advice. So we're talking about more emotional. And then you're right, the emotions may lead to that you're being disempowered and practically
Finances.
exactly. And so it's very important to understand how you got into that position, because if you do not understand how you got into that position and what's going on inside of your belief structure, then you won't be able to find your way back out of it.
Okay, so that's an interesting point you're making, that although there can be tangible, physical, practical issues that do keep people stuck, even then the original base, the root of those practical constraints can arise from emotional things as well.
Well, I'll give you a practical example from a client I've just been working with and still are working with. And it's a lady, and she has this fear that she keeps on telling me. You see, she describes a feeling. She has the fear of being rejected. And because she has this fear of being rejected, her decision making all through the relationship, and it's quite a long relationship, it's not a short relationship, is to kind of placate or to please the male partner, to give in to him, to try and walk on eggshells, she told me, that it's walking around. But yes, and I'm not saying the partner hasn't got anything to do with this, and he may be out of balance himself, but you'll never deal with it until you understand why you are creating the emotion, in this lady's case, of fear. Remember, you are the creator of your emotions. You are not the victim. And your understanding of being rejected. So right now, I'm working with this lady on those two issues, because until we get those issues resolved in herself, she cannot address the problem with the relationship.
Yeah.
So you almost, and my teaching and the Wu Wei teaching is, and what I say to my clients is, first of all, make sure the relationship you have with yourself is strong and balanced and in harmony, what I would call Wu Wei, before you can address the relationships with other people. So, in the example that I'm giving, she's creating a red light feeling of being abandoned or being rejected. We have to deal with that. And then we have to deal with, she can't talk to the person. She has to hold everything back. She's worried about confrontation. She doesn't like being shouted at. She doesn't like arguments. Well, no one likes arguments. I'm not trying to convince her to like an argument, but you have to give her the tools to deal with it if the other person wants to go into an argument. And that's why you have to build yourself and ground yourself in the stability of what I call Shen, or your spirituality. And can I just say a word on that? When I talk about Shen and spirituality, I'm not talking about some supernatural kind of woo-woo type of thing, angels or religion or crystals. I'm not talking about anything like that. I'm talking about who you are. I believe strongly that you're more than just your physical appearance. You have an energy, a spirit about you, whatever you want to call it. My words would be chi energy or Shen, but you may want to call it some other words. But never underestimate that power of who you are, because to resolve these type of difficulties in toxic relationships, first of all, you have to start with a relationship with yourself.
And so I guess if we disconnect from that authenticity within us, our spiritual strength, which is there really to help support us and guide us through any difficult life challenges, if we disconnect from that, that means then we are more connected into our inner child's fears, that part of our mind, which some people call the ego or the emotional mind. We are then not being led by our authenticity, we're being led by our ego, our inner child, which is kind of driven by fear, which is driven by the need to emotionally protect itself because it believes it's going to be abandoned, because it believes it's not good enough, because it believes no one else will love it. If I leave this relationship, no one else is going to love me. Or if I leave, I'm not going to be able to cope.
I think that's the point, though, Alex, of doing this video, is to focus on the issue that you just brought up. It's like, where are you grounding yourself? As Alex has just said, are you grounding yourself in what we label the inner child? You may label it some other way, your emotional mind or your ego. But I think you'll see, if you watch some of our old teachings, that the inner child works much better. If you're basing your life in your decision making and dealing with relationships from the inner child, you will be driven or led by your emotions. Or you have the alternatives that we're sharing with you. Why don't you ground yourself in your Shen, in your truth, in your honesty, in your integrity? Why don't you value yourself? Because as Alex has just explained, if you ground your life, if you make your foundations those beliefs of the inner child, that belief of the inner child is always looking externally for value, for approval, for validation, to be made special, to be wanting things their way. It's very manipulative. And a lot of my clients don't like when I use that word. But I believe all children are somewhat manipulative and they use their emotions. And that part of you will do the same. So if you're grounding yourself in that energy of the inner child, how can you stand up for yourself? Not even in an aggressive way, but how can you have a clear discussion with your partner Because one of the things about grounding yourself is in the inner child can quickly see themselves as a victim. And this is what we're talking about here when we talk about toxic emotional relationships. That one of the partners see themselves as inferior. And I always think about it like a scale. When you see yourself as inferior, you immediately raise the other person to superior. So when you say the three lies, I'm not good enough, I can't cope, I'm unworthy, I'm unlovable, as you said, Alex, if I leave, I'll never find another relationship, I'll be on my own, I'll grow old, I'll be lonely. And you see, you run this story through your head, and that's what keeps this toxic relationship kind of cemented together.
Yeah, because I can see that, if we enter into a relationship, even, if it's happy, joyful, we see lots of potential. If we are coming into any relationship, or if we're driven by that inner child need for external validation, external support, external approval, then it's almost like we allow ourselves, and we actively try to create a relationship of codependency, so that we become codependent on being in the relationship and codependent on our partner. And that's may work well when times are good, and they're reciprocating, they're giving you the validation, the support, and everything you need. But as soon as things go awry, things get rocky, you've now basically built your life on fragile foundations, because this relationship is everything to you. This partner is everything to you. The relationship and the partner is it's almost like your lifeline, your nourishment for your own self-value and your self-worth. And so it's like, it's not just a case of, oh, I'm leaving my partner, I'm leaving a relationship. Your partner and relationship for a lot of people become your whole world.
I think it's an excellent point you've just made there. And codependency is a real strong point when people are stuck in a toxic emotional relationship, because they believe that they need the lifeline of the other person. I often imagine it, I like to kind of imagine pictures. It's like you need the oxygen. You need oxygen to live, but the other person has got their hand on the control. And so you're always in the recipient, you always put them more powerful. And then what that does, and this is the teaching of Taoism and living in balance and harmony, what that does, it moves the balance. It shifts the balance. Very subtly, as you say, you don't wake up one morning, or you don't go into the relationship with this thought. But if you have this belief inside of you over the weeks, months, years, slowly the relationship changes. It's not just happening one day, because there's obviously, if you met a person that was extremely domineering or overpowering, you probably wouldn't have gone through the dating stage. So it's a very subtle movement. And that's why I'm emphasizing that you have to be very clear and build the relationship with yourself. And here's the life lesson. This is the life lesson of this teaching. If you're in this emotional toxic relationship, look inside of you first. Let's clear all that up. Let's go down and do the golden thread, which we demonstrate in many teachings, and ask yourself the self-inquiry questions. Why do I believe this? If you're like the lady that I'm working with at the moment, if you believe that you can be rejected, then look at that. See, I would totally disagree. No human being can reject another one. They can choose not to be with them, but they can't reject you. You're not a piece of, I nearly swore then, you're not a piece of something that they can scrape off your shoes. You're much more important than that. And so you see, when you get down to the core of it, it's how you value yourself. And I often think, and most of this is, you brought an excellent point, codependency. I would want you to be self-sufficient, not codependent, because You should be in a relationship because the two people want to be in that relationship, not that the one person is grateful to be in a relationship, because immediately the energy, the balance of the energy of the relationship will become toxic. That's what we're talking about. And so many of my clients will say, well, if I could only change them, if they would change, if they would do something different. And I'm saying, no, start with you first, because when you're right, the energy of the relationship changes. They have to change. Let me just say that may mean the relationship will come to an end. That could happen. But let's get you right first. If that is one of the outcomes, let's get you in balance so you can address and deal with that.
Well, there's a couple of things there, David. Firstly, what you said, that thing of people saying, oh, well, I don't want to leave because I love them, or they will change, or, I feel sorry for them, they're struggling, that's why they're behaving badly. It's like our inner child can make all these excuses to stay put, even though it's painful, difficult, toxic. And that's we're kind of kidding ourselves in a way, but it's because our inner child fears the unknown, which is what happens when I confront this person, my partner, or what happens when I leave this relationship. That's a fear of the unknown, and the inner child hates that. So it would rather try to convince you that, oh, well, things may change, they'll change. I still love them. I'll never love anyone as much as them, or no one will ever love me as much as this person. So there's that going on. But in parallel to it, David, I think for a lot of people, when they're in the codependency setup, it's not just about their inner child and what's going on with them and needing to take self-responsibility for it, which is very much a big part of it. But it's also what the partner's doing, because the partner can be equally manipulative. The partner can be working in the relationship through their inner child and almost playing upon your own insecurities. So the partner will know, it will maybe saying things to play upon the lies that you have within your belief system, such as I'm not good enough, I'm not going to be able to cope, I can't manage if I leave. The partner may recognize those fears and be kind of keeping you trapped as well in this codependency setup.
Well, you make some excellent points here, Alex. But you see that when you start to listen to your points, it's always based on your emotion.
Yeah.
And so what you're doing, remember I said earlier, where are you grounding yourself? Where are you foundations? In my teaching in the Tao Te Ching, it says, can you build your foundations on rock? Don't build it on sand. And if you build your foundation of who you are and your identity and your story on the sand of your emotion, this will quickly melt away. And then you are stuck, because then you're looking for always someone else to come in and to placate or to make your emotions better. So what you've said there, when you analyze what you're saying is that, okay, the other person sees your insecurities.
Yeah.
So I would say, well, shouldn't you have already done the work and find out what it is you're insecure about? But the way you were saying it is, it's the emotion. They see the emotion of your insecurities.
Yeah.
And that's why this teaching, I would say, it's very rare you hear me say this, it's life-changing. You are the creator of your emotions. You are not the victim. So important. Now, that is not saying that emotions are wrong. That is not saying you shouldn't experience emotions. I'm saying emotions are natural, normal, part of who you are. You should celebrate your emotions, but don't build your life on the sand of emotions, because the next tide that comes in, it will just wash away. Build it on the rock of your Shen spirituality, of what you stand for. Then, when you build it on that rock, if your partner is doing something out of the boundaries that you've already established, you will be able to address that. And not in a, remember, because if you build it on the sand of the inner child, you'll either be the victim, poor me, start crying, my insecurities, all the things that you said, and you empower your partner, or you'll swing the other way. This is when you become very angry, very aggressive. You don't take fools lightly. You're at the throat immediately. And both of these extremes means that you cannot have any chance of sorting the relationship out, if it can be sorted. So that's why the first step is to build yourself, the relationship with yourself, on the rock of what your values are. What do you stand for? What are your principles? What are your morals? Now, I've listed there 2 or 3 things: principles, standards, morals, values. This is what I would also call beliefs. What do you believe? What do you stand for? And I want those connected to your Shen, to your spirituality. So you're not codependent. You only want people to be with you because they want to be with you, and you can work together at sorting out the problems. And this is why the emotional basis of a relationship is so very important. And as we said at the beginning, it can, not always, lead on to other things. But the first step is to get that emotion clear in your mind.
And David, we've done so many teachings on doing this work within ourselves, with our inner child, to really question if we do doubt ourselves, if we are insecure, if we believe we're not good enough, if we believe we're unlovable, if we believe we're not going to be able to cope. We have so many teachings to help you understand where these beliefs came from and how to resolve them, how to do that inner work, which I can put links to some of those in the show notes for you. But what you're saying, David, is once you've done that inner work, so you're more self-reliant, so you're more in control of your emotions, you're holding beliefs which are truthful. They're not lies. Once you're more grounded in that way, then not only do you not doubt your ability to be able to leave the relationship and cope beyond the relationship.
Or sort the relationship
out. But if your partner tries to manipulate you or keep you trapped or enforce like the kind of codependency bonding situation with you, it will have no effect on you.
Zero.
Because it's like you're not playing the game anymore with them.
Zero. The example that I use, imagine that your house doorbell is connected by a battery, and every time somebody presses the button, the bell rings. If you take the battery out, they can stay there all day pressing the button. No bell will ring. And if you do this work that I'm suggesting, first work with yourself, you cannot be triggered. And all of the tricks that they may be using will have no effect on you. You will be able to stay in your balance. I'm not saying your emotions won't go up and down, but you will not be overwhelmed by your emotions. And more importantly, you will not make decisions based on your emotions, because there's where it goes wrong. If you agree with me that you are the creator of your emotions, again, nothing wrong with emotions, but if you base your decisions on emotions, you're not taking into account what created the emotion. You're in responsive mode. And I want you to be in a proactive mode, working from what you believe to be the truth, honesty, and integrity, working from your values, your principles, what you hold dear to be in life, on that rock that defines you, not believing the false story or having a false identity, or some of my clients call it a false self of the inner child, because all the inner child will prefer, you said it perfectly, Alex, it will prefer the known, even if the known is not successful. This is what a lot of my clients do not understand. Let me repeat that. That part of your mind that we are calling the inner child will always favor the known, the familiar, even if it's not successful, because it works on this principle, better the devil you know. Because if I go down the unknown, I don't know what's going to happen. So even though I know this is not working and never will work, or perhaps I'll roll over some more, or perhaps I'll surrender some more, or perhaps I'll please them more, or perhaps I'll be more weaker, or perhaps I'll be more angry, more dominant, it goes down that road because it says, well, I don't know the alternative. I don't know how this will work out. And in a way, it's right. We don't know how it's going to work out. But what I'm saying to you, that's when you're building it on the foundation of rock, then at least you're working in your principles and your values and your truth, and your beliefs become aligned with your energy, your chi energy.
And final thing I wanted to say, David, is that if we do this inner work and create more solid foundation for ourselves in terms of our beliefs about ourselves and our ability to cope and our ability on our value, our worth, we have to do some work. We get ourselves, we may be able to leave the relationship, the toxic relationship, but this is ongoing work, because if we don't keep consistent with the work of managing our emotions, correcting our inner self-talk when we get negative about ourselves, when we start criticizing ourselves, judging ourselves, comparing ourselves negatively, if we don't do this work consistently, then our inner child may swing back. And so we may end up going back into the relationship with the person, or we may end up going into a relationship with a different person, but it's exactly the same type of relationship that we've just left.
And that's one of the most difficult things in my relationship of working with couples and coming very friendly with couples. And we've gone through, and the relationship has had to end because it was too toxic for both of them. And then you find one of the partners will go back into a very similar relationship because they have not done this inner work. And this is why I wanted to do this video and answer this wonderful question, because it's a very complicated question for us to answer, because there is distinctions here. And I know that if you're in a physically abusive relationship and being tortured and being this is not what we're talking about. We're talking about the emotional side, and the life lesson in all of these relationship videos is very clear, and I don't mind repeating it. Before you can have a really meaningful, true relationship with someone else, doesn't matter how much you love them, you have to have a strong and meaningful relationship with yourself. And that's why I like the label of the inner child. Think about you as the spiritual parent to your inner child. And you cannot have that internal tug of war, that fighting, that internal battle on every situation, particularly in relationships, because that resolves around emotions. And the trump card that the inner child will always produce is your emotions. How do I feel? What is this like? I'm overwhelmed. I'm scared. I'm frightened. This is too much. I can't cope. I don't like confrontation. These are the subjects that you have to resolve. And then you'll be able to address the relationship, the physical relationship. And as Alex says, unfortunately, that may mean that it has to end, but it may not mean that, because I believe and I see in my work, as you change, remember we talked about the scales going up and down, as you change, your partner has to change. He has to, because the energy of the relationship is changing. Now, that might mean terrible rows and upsets, but at least you're gaining ground and you're building from that rock and you're putting right all of the things that have gone wrong. And in a way, what my clients tell me, that they still don't like arguments or confrontation. Who does? No one does. But in a way, they're gaining an inner strength from that, because now they don't keep losing and surrendering and rolling over and going belly up. Now they can stand their ground much calmer. So when the other person is shouting and screaming and slamming doors, they're very centered and they're very connected to their shed. And that then is how you clear that toxic relationship. And that's why I like the word of what this question said, toxic, because you've got to clear that toxicity out of your body. You've got to clear it out of your mindset. You've got to clear it out of your thinking, out of your beliefs, out of your principles, and you've got to clear your beliefs in onto a good, solid foundation.
Thank you, David. Well, as I say, I will put links to many other useful teachings in the show notes for you to help you do this work and understand a little bit more about the dynamic and the relationship issues that we've touched upon in this particular teaching. If you have enjoyed or benefited from this teaching, please do let us know and perhaps share it with someone else who you think may also benefit. David works one-to-one with clients all over the world every week by Zoom video call on these types of relationship issues. And if you'd like to learn more about David's consultations, I will also put a link in the show notes for you as well. And finally, please don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel. We produce new teachings every week, and we would love to share your journey with you. Bye-bye.